Hi everyone, Brian here, back with a look at part 7 of my video game collection and retro game room. This will cover the Sega Master System and Sega Genesis. So I keep my Sega Master System and Genesis on this shelf here. At least the box stuff here. And some of it spills over. Cartridge stuff is on this shelf right here. So at the top we have this Rocky figure, which by Nika, who made a lot of, are starting to make a lot of video game themed action figures. This one is based on the Rocky 8-bit Master System game. And it's by far my favorite looking of them. I have just the Batman one and this one. There's a Predator one which I saw, but I didn't think looked that good, so I didn't get it. And there's a Contra series coming out with Lance and Bill, which I'm really looking forward to. Okay, so we'll start off here with my box Master System games. So we'll go over to from left to right, and I'm not going to say, I might say about each just one or two, but I'll just pan over. Altered Beast, the 8-bit port of Altered Beast. This black box grid one sticks out like a sore thumb. It is actually, looks like an early Genesis title grid box if you look at it. Actually, when I saw it in the store, I thought it was a Genesis game. 2 Mega Power, love that. I love how the 90s had, during that era of video games, cartridge games, they advertised like the megabytes of their games, megabits of their games or whatever. This skinny little case here is the Sega Master System card games. They came in this little slim case. Looked like TurboGrafx Hue cards. This is part of the Action series, you see. Govelius, that's like a Zelda kind of really cool box art. I love the white grid. Okay, so that is my Master System box games. Down here is a look at my loose cartridge Master System games. They have a lot of the Master System games have the end labels which are like fading or torn. I put these little end labels from a label maker I have. So we'll just go across these. And of course I have my little Sega sign here. So those two shelves are my Master System collection games. Now we start with my favorite Sega console of all time, the Sega Genesis. I didn't have one growing up, but I did have a friend who had one. And I played a lot of the Genesis games at his house. And I will point out the ones that I have played at his house growing up that have nostalgia. Aladdin, that's one I played. I should say very popular game, sold a lot. Disney animators made the animation for it, and it was put in the game. There's also a Super Nintendo version, which the only one I've ever beaten. The Sega Genesis one is more action-oriented. The Super Nintendo one is more platform-based, which I really like. Renovation was a company that did a lot of games for the Genesis. Arcus Odyssey was one that I remember from Nick Arcade. Back in the day, I used to watch that show. That was a game they could play in the Mikey's Video Challenge. Genesis was known for its shooters. This is one of many, Biohazard Battle. Blaster Master 2, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, Clue, Ghouls and Ghosts. The Genesis early on was known for its ports of popular, at the time, arcade games. You could play Ghouls and Ghosts Ultra Beast on the Genesis, and it blew people away. Golden Axe was one I played at my friend's house a lot as well. Not so much the sequel, but I did play I think we did play the sequel, but I remember playing Golden Axe. This is a Sega Classics, almost like a greatest hit packaging that they have. They put on a few games had it. This was when the rating system was around, so it's a later game release. You can say this one is rated kids to adult there. Yeah, this was a 1995 re-release of Golden Axe. Grindstormer. Funny thing about this is a lot of copies that they sent out did not work. So I don't know if because of that it became valuable, because there wasn't a lot, but I did find that copy really, really cheap for $2.50 complete a few years ago. Mutant League Hockey. I have memories of playing Mutant League Football, my favorite sports game on a Genesis, at a friend's house. Mutant League Hockey is just as fun. Rocket Knight Adventures, I recently finished that. I did cheat and use a Game Genie, but it was a blast to play through. Sonic 2, I remember have fond memories of playing that at a friend's house. Sparkster, the sequel to Rocket Knight Adventures. It was also on the Super Nintendo, which I have, the Super Nintendo version, which I have. They were completely different games, and they're fun platformers. Spider-Man, a very early Genesis release, and that's Spider-Man based on the 1994 animated Marvel cartoon. Streets of Rage 3, didn't play it growing up, but found that copy for cheap, as well as Turtles Hyperstone Heist I found for cheap. Buster's Hidden Treasure, very fun platformer. I love Tiny Toons. Toe Jam and Earl is one I played at a friend's house, have fond memories of. World of Illusion. And here you see these boxes are cardboard. Later releases, around when the ESRB rated games, I think, or the Sega had its own rating system on games. See that GA. During the whole Joe Lieberman Night Trap Mortal Kombat thing, Sega came out with a rating system for their games. And here's one, a much later release with the ESRB rating on it. So this one was probably in the late 90s, mid-90s, 95 or so. So they came in these boxes. Sega put them out on these boxes, which don't look as nice as the clamshells and don't hold as much up as good. So these are later released Genesis games, so I just separated them here. This is right here is the Sega Menacer 6-in-1 game cartridge. Came with the Sega Menacer light gun game accessory, much like the Super Scope 6 for the Super Nintendo. You had a cartridge with 6 games on it. The box is kind of bent, but it did come with 6 games on it. And as far as I know, these are the only 6 games for the Menacer. I think you could use it for Lethal Enforcers maybe, but I'm not 100% sure. And we have Zany Golf here. A fun if you like mini golf. This is basically what Zany Golf is. Came in a weird kind of box, so I kind of separated it. Okay, so that is my Sega Genesis collection. Takes place on... Well, that's my Sega Genesis box collection, is on these 3 shelves here. I wanted to point out here, this is see that's Sega Kids Club Sega Club. These were games designed especially for kids, and they had this Sega Club logo on it. Later Genesis releases, Sega also released a system called the Pico, which was aimed at kids, which I've never even seen or played. I do not have that, so stand up. So that's my boxed Genesis games. We'll go over here to my loose Genesis games, but I wanted to show, I showed the Sega Menacer 6-pack games. Here's my Sega Menacer here. Very big light gun accessory, different looks from the Super Scope 6. I had these two things you looked into, not really, and there is a sight. If I can shine the camera through, you see that little pinhole? You kind of line it up with the screen and you shoot with the triggers here. And there was a little attachment that you attached. It's in a drawer that you had to use it to work. So that's the Sega Menacer. Okay, let me put this out of the way here so I don't trip. Here are my loose cartridge Genesis games. I have quite a few. I have pretty much, there are more Genesis games I want than Super Nintendo are left. I pretty much have most of the Super Nintendo games I want. There's probably maybe 10 that I really want Super Nintendo left. Genesis, there's about maybe 10 or 12 or so, so about the same I want. We'll start over here. Another thing about Genesis games is the cartridges. Some of the ink on some titles tends to get black and splotchy. I don't know why that is. Maybe somebody knows why, or I could research it. You can see my copy of Beyond Oasis here kind of has some bad ink on it. So we'll start here. I'll just go through. Altered Beast was one I played at a friend's house. That's Beyond Oasis there by Alicia Dragoon. My Sega Game Gear, or Sega Game Genie, not Game Gear, and another loose Sega Game Gear. I do still use, or Sega Game Genie. I do still use the Game Genie. I used it recently to complete Contra Hard Corps, because that game's really tough. Kadash, Captain America, and the Avengers. There was also a port on the Super Nintendo. I think it's a completely different game. The one on the Genesis is more like the arcade game. Castlevania Bloodlines. This is a game I finished, but I used a Game Genie on it just to get through it. I had the most hard time with Castlevania Bloodlines, even though I love the game. It's the hardest of the classic ones for me to play. That only has to do with the fact that I haven't played it as much as the NES and the Super Castlevania 4. Earthworm Jim, also on the Super Nintendo. El Viento, a series. This was a sequel to another Genesis game called Ernest Evans. Genghis Khan 2, Clan of the Grey Wolf, right there. There's also guns. So this is what I wanted to point out here. See the Gunstar Heroes right there? If I can put my finger right here. Gunstar Heroes is here. See the spot of black ink there? A lot of Genesis labels have that problem where the ink kind of gets blocky or splotchy. I don't know what causes it. Mario Lemieux Hockey. I'm not really a big sports guy, but I do love Mario Lemieux. He's my favorite hockey player. And being from Pittsburgh, you kind of have to. What's that game there? Well, that's Operation Europe right there. Right here. It's kind of hard to see. That's Operation Europe. Phantasy Star 4. Phantom 2040, also on the Super Nintendo. This label game right here is hard to see, but that is the Punisher. That's based on the arcade Punisher game, I think. Ranger X, a much later Genesis side-scrolling shooter, known for its graphics. Rise Star, fun platformer where you grab enemies and hit them with your head. You're like this star guy. This one right here is hard to see next to Shinobi, The Revenge of Shinobi. That's Sequest DSV. Shining Force 2. and shining in the darkness. I have two copies of Shinobi 3 for some reason. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Those are games I remember playing in a friend's house. I do have another box copy of Sonic 2. I think if you own a Genesis, it comes with at least Sonic 1 or 2 or both. It's very common. Splatterhouse 3, the only one of the Genesis Splatterhouses that I have. And it's different than the other ones from what I understand. This one you can move up and down. It's more of a free-roaming, exploring, time-based game where you have to go through the mansion, beat enemies, to progress, and find your way to your girlfriend in time. And depending if you make it in time, you get a different ending. Strider, very popular port of the arcade game. Streets of Rage 2, probably my most played Genesis game and most fond memories of a Genesis game I have, because I played it a ton at my friend's house, the previous friend that I told you about. The friend I told you about previously, I should say. Trampoline Terror, this was weird. When I saw it, it was all white, and I thought it was like a bootleg or something, but no, the game comes in this white cartridge, and it's really weird. I don't know why. It kind of cheaped out on the label. My flashlight's kind of... there we go. Okay, here are the weird-looking EA games. I'll pull one out here for you. My favorite. This game's awesome. Mutant League Football. See how they're in a big, tall kind of case compared to the other cartridge games. See here. EA did that. I don't know if... I think it's because they broke the copy protection on the Genesis. There's something to do with something about why they did that. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it had to do with copy protection. Spiritual Warfare, this is a Wisdom Tree game. I also have it on the NES, I think. It's like a Zelda top-down adventure game where you have to convert the heathens to Christianity. It's actually not too bad. And we have Fantastic Dizzy, which is another weird-looking cartridge. This is by Codemasters. And that is my Genesis collection. Right here we have, I might as well go over because I don't have a lot, my 32X. Start right here with Afterburner. That's a 32X. BC Racers, Cosmic Carnage, Doom, Knuckles Chaotix, which is one of the more popular must-have titles on the 32X. And Virtual Racing. So not a lot of 32X. And here's my 32X. I think I showed it in part 1. This is my Sega Battleship, I think they call it. A Model 2 Sega CD with the Model 1 Genesis. And thing just looks mean. It looks really, really cool. But yeah, that's my Sega Master System and Sega Genesis and Sega 32X cartridge games. So, hope everybody enjoyed it and have a great day. Bye.